to the Skill of the Month Club. We're in month 2 of our 12 skills in 12 months. This month we're working with old-fashioned cooking and scratch cooking. And this is our second week, and I am chatting again with my friend Angela Withers. If you didn't get to see last week's chat, you should check it out. We talked about what to eat, some ideas of how to transition from being someone who's really used to boxed dinners or prepared foods to someone who's cooking mostly from scratch and from raw ingredients. And Angela even offered some ideas of what not to do along those lines. So helpful stuff. But we're back again today, and today we're going to talk about seasonal cooking, which is an idea that we've brought up a couple of times already. And particularly since we're in Idaho and it's still February, we're going to talk about what kinds of foods are appropriate for winter seasonal eating. So Angela's my neighbor in country terms. She's not my neighbor like Joanna's my neighbor, but I certainly can drive to her house, and we've struck up a good friendship, and she's even cooked me dinner a few times. So I was wondering if you would give people a sense of kind of how you eat. What kind of foods do you eat?
Yes, and it's actually really kind of changed over the last 5 years. And it was funny because one time we were sitting at the table and my daughter looked at me, I think she was probably 8 at this time, and she said, "Mom, what lifestyle are we going to be this month?"
This month?
This month. We changed. Sometimes I'd be like, "No, I don't think we should eat that." And so we'd cut something out completely, and then I'd start to really learn why we should have that in our diet. So we'd bring it back in. So my children and my husband, they've been very good sports about it all, but they have been on kind of a roller coaster of trying to figure out, how are we supposed to eat? How are we meant to eat? And when you leave this lifestyle of being used to things coming from a box or in a package from the store, and now you're trying to just cook everything from scratch, there's a lot of ups and downs in trying to figure out our nutrition. What different nutrient needs do we have, and is the new, because before, so many things that we were buying in packages were all fortified with different nutrients or minerals, and now where you're eating everything from scratch, you're trying to figure out, are we getting those correct nutrients and minerals into our diets? And we could start to see none of our children had ever had any problems with dental problems, any cavities or anything like that. And just the last year and a half, that started showing up. So then I started doing a bunch of research and trying to figure out what else needs to be in our diet to strengthen our teeth. And we found it. We found what we needed. It's been really neat to be able to realize that you can control that through your diet. You can give your body exactly what it needs to be healthy and strong. But boy, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of trial and error, there's a lot of experimenting that goes into it to get to that point. And we're still not at the point that we would like to be. We're at the point where we really don't rely on any packaged goods from the stores anymore and make most everything from scratch. But that's only, and I thought before that was my destination and my goal, but it's only increased in me a desire to grow it all myself now. Now I want to grow it all, and now that I know how to cook with it, I'm experimenting with trying to grow it all, and so it's kind of like that goal has only gone further out here, and my vision's expanded of what we really want.
That happens
where
to us
we really
too.
want to get.
Yeah, that for sure happens to us too. Probably someone out there has known about that, where you find yourself researching seeds for something you didn't even know existed 2 years ago.
Yes. So as far as our diet and what kind of a menu idea is, it's really changed over the last 5 years. And what I finally come down to, and a lot of it started with us reading and learning a lot about plant-based diets, and then shifting and reading a lot about and learning a lot about the benefits of a lot of animal products in our diets. And as we researched that, and some of that came from scripture as well, that we were inspired by a lot of the seasonal eating that was spoken of in scripture. And so as we started trying to put together all these pieces of this puzzle to figure out how is our family supposed to eat, how are we supposed to eat for optimum health, that really is where my children were feeling like this up and down roller coaster. What lifestyle are we this month? And so the ultimate goal that I finally began to understand through it all is that the people who have researched and put forth a lot of information about the benefits of a plant-based diet, it's really correct. But all of the information that you can read that's been put together about having a diet that's rich in animal products and is really correct too. We have these two truths, and when we begin to learn how to eat seasonally, those truths come together, and that's where we're finally at. And it's been about a little over a year now that we've been really trying to tailor our diet to have it seasonal. And so during the summers, the spring, the warmer months when chickens are laying plentifully and cows are giving plenty of milk, or goats, those are the times that you really have your diet rich in eggs and dairy, yogurts, sour creams, soft cheeses, and then begin making all your hard cheeses to last through the winter because you have a large amount of that coming at that time. But quiche, things like that you can use up what's in season. And during the springs and the summer and the fall, that's when you have so much out there growing. Obviously the spring is when you're going to be using a lot of the new plants that are just sprouting up, and you're going to be adding a lot of those things into your diet. And that's what we found, is that as we've lived our menu basically in accordance with the season, you're ready for that. Like our kids are really ready to start eating sprouts come springtime, because they've had plenty of meat and potatoes and all the baked goods through the winter, and they're ready. And we're kind of getting to that, here it is, February. We're kind of getting to that point. I can tell all of us are kind of like, we're ready for fresh. Ready for fresh back into our diet, which, looking at the snow we still have here.
We still have 2 months.
But that's the blessing of being able to add in sprouts and start to learn how to use those things as well. You can kind of jumpstart some of that and do a lot of your own sprouting in your own kitchen to be able to add fresh back in during those months. And during that time when you're kind of getting that cabin fever and you're ready for springtime to start coming along. So during the winter, obviously I kind of talked about it, that's when a lot of our our winter squashes and our root vegetables, our carrots, our potatoes, turnips, onions, those kind of things are the things that store just naturally during winter. A lot of your green apples will keep pretty well through the winter. And during the late summer, fall, that's when you've got all the great things that are coming from the garden, your melons and your fresh corn and tomatoes, plentiful with tomatoes. And learning how to use those things as they are naturally in their season ensures that we're actually getting the complete nourishment and nutrients and vitamins that we need, because we're using animal products all through the year, but we're not relying on meats heavily during the summer months, during the warmer months. We're saving those for when we have those cold winter months, and using the fish and dairy and eggs during the summers is kind of the diet and the lifestyle that we've been living.
So I've got to jump in here on a couple of things. One, we have people viewing us from all different kinds of climates, and some of you even in the Southern Hemisphere, although the Skill of the Month Club is not matching up to your climate, of course. So I've talked a little bit before, I think people have heard me talk before about how the choice to use animal products or not, for me, is related to climate. So it's really interesting for me to hear Angela talk about all of this, because we've taken, I would say, sort of opposite directions to some similar understandings. I never really did the research. That's why Angela's sitting here right now. I wasn't the one I didn't necessarily have that as a priority. We were off the grid and we were trying to survive on as little as possible, trying to work as little as possible so that we had a lot of freedom in our time. And we ended up eating seasonally as well, because that's what we could afford to do, and that's what worked with our off-grid lifestyle when we didn't have year-round refrigeration. So I love hearing how Angela came to the understanding of seasonal eating and how we did because I think we actually eat in some actually kind of similar ways, but I didn't have the same pot. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. Welcome to my kitchen. Come and check it out. I keep an area where I have food that is prepackaged. So that's been one way to adjust if you're easing into a lifestyle of cooking everything from scratch. On the top shelf, however, is several things that are actually in season, things that have grown in Idaho, minus the peanuts right there. But a lot of these things have either been grown in Idaho, Washington, or Oregon. So they're right close to our area. And there's more that I can show you in our pantry. Rye, corn, different kinds of beans. I've got white beans down there as well. Here's some more corn here. Oats. These are all things that grow in our area. I've got different kinds of wheats down here, some hard white wheat and some soft white wheat and some einkorn grain right down here, wheat. Those are all things that grow in Idaho and that are things that naturally store through the winter and that we use regularly. During the winter months, those are months that we do a lot more grains, we do a lot more meats, we do a lot of broths, and we've learned to really use the animal if we're using chicken or if we're using turkey or if we're using deer. We do a lot of deer. If we're using those things, we've tried to learn how to use as much of the animal as possible to not be wasteful. So we'll make all sorts of broths. We'll use different parts. A lot of the organ meats, things that I never used before that now are the bones that are a very important and nutrient-dense part of the animal that I've learned how to cook with that our ancestors really knew. I talked about my reliance on coconut oil, and I actually stocked up on coconut oil even though there's no coconut trees anywhere near Idaho. So I was very heavily reliant on that and had to start learning how to switch over to things like lard or tallow, and that's been new to learn how to use butter. A lot of things like that that are naturally in our climate and in our season, and to be able to use those as a lot of my oils and fats that I hadn't used before. So one of the things that our ancestors used to do is they would store their potatoes, and obviously they would use a root cellar or somewhere that was a little bit cold, but not too cold that anything could freeze in there. And there's certain things you can do to be able to build something. You want to get below the frost level, dig down to where you're going to put in your cellar. And you can even do it in the crawl space of your home if you have a good area down in there. And they would send out their children to go out and they would break off any sprouts that were starting to grow on the potatoes. And they would regularly go out and check their squashes and check their root vegetables. And they would rotate them, check which ones were showing signs of softness and starting to overripe, and that is what would be their next day's meal, or their next meal plan would be which things needed to be used up first. So another thing too is that some of the vegetables, like if you're growing cabbage, some of those things can actually stay in a root cellar, and they'll stay for several weeks, even up to a month and a half, a little while longer. And then as they start to look like they need to be used up, you can peel off whatever outer layers have gotten soft, and you can chop those up, and then you can culture those to make your own sauerkrauts or fermented vegetables, and then those will stay for many more months in your root cellar. So there were different tricks that our ancestors knew and could use and rely on to be able to draw out their harvest and give themselves really more time to be able to make it through the winter off of what they had stored. Here are some winter squash. There's summer squash that are softer, that are not meant to go through the winter, and then there's winter squash. And these are a lot harder on the outside, and these are things that you'll want to rotate through your root cellar and keep a good eye on them. And when you see any spots where they might be starting to go bad or mold could form on those quickly, you want to move those to the front so those get into your menu plan a lot sooner, so you're not wasting, but you're using what you have and keeping whatever ones look like they're in really good condition. You're wanting to try to hold on to those and preserve those through the winter. Another thing about winter eating and being able to do what's in season during the winter is that's a time that we're reliant on a lot of dried beans that we grew in our garden, and then we can dry ourselves. And those beans, one thing that's very important about having a lot of beans in your diet through the winter is that they give you a lot of fiber, and they help your system keep everything flushing through your system. Because when you're using a lot of baked goods and a lot of meats and a lot of potatoes, you're going to be needing something with roughage that can help push everything through, and beans are excellent for that. And they store so well, so if you don't use it up during the winter, you've got it for next winter as well. So beans, dried peas. There's also, winter time is a time to use a lot of nuts and seeds. These are ones that you can grow in our area, in our climate. Hazelnuts or sunflower seeds. These are pumpkin seeds and walnuts back here. Another thing that it stores really well through the winter months are these are dried cherries, dried cranberries, and we've got dried apples back here. So drying a lot of your fruits, you can even dry your vegetables as well. My sister slices her zucchini. When you have so many zucchini in the summertime, my sister slices them really, really thin and then salts them and dries them, and they're so good. It's just zucchini chips to be able to pull out. So those are some ideas for what's in season in the winter, in Idaho anyway. We'd love to hear from different areas. Tell us what's in season in your location, in your climate. Oh, we should probably talk about this right here. Is this fine?
Yes, you're good.
So, during the winter is also a time, there's been a huge focus on people shifting away from using grains, and a lot of that has been for health problems, or for health reasons. And some of that goes back to us just not preparing our grains. Our ancestors used to use natural yeast, a sourdough, that would actually break down a lot of the gluten and some of the anti-nutrients that are found in the grains. And when we can prepare those grains correctly, our body can digest them a lot easier. However, the problem is we have really turned to a society where we're reliant, a lot of the standard American diet is reliant on meat all year long and grains all year long. And when we learn to kind of use those in season, it'll be a lot less grains during the summer and during the warmer months, and a lot more grains during the winter months, a lot less meat during the summer months, and a lot more meat during the winter. As we learn to use those and eat seasonally, our body can balance out what we're putting in there, because we're putting in the correct things that we need during the different times of the year.
Well, I think we'll probably have to have Angela back again, because there was a lot to say there, so we'll have to do another one. But you've been watching the Skill of the Month Club, and we've been talking about old-fashioned cooking and scratch cooking. We're going to have some more tutorials and some more chats and just suggestions to encourage anybody at any path, at any point on the path. And this is also the place where I remind you that if you are somebody who's into this, whether you consider yourself an expert or not, feel free to contribute your thoughts as well, so that we can encourage one another and have a sense of community around this, because that really is the opposite of competition, and we just want to foster an environment where everybody feels like their input is appreciated. That's what the Skill of the Month Club is all about. So this is Angela Withers, and you have a YouTube channel.
Yes, just started it.
Just started.
Esther's taught me, and I've slowly been working on it and figuring it out.
I'm starting the YouTube revolution here in Southern Idaho. We're taking over YouTube, Southern Idaho is. So feel free to check that out, and we'll be sure to have Angela on again.
Thanks. Good luck with all your cooking.